What are the best Netflix movies from 2020? Let's do this. What is up, Netflix fans? Welcome back to my channel. We somehow made it to the end of 2020. This is the first in a series of videos covering the best and worst of the year. And today we are talking specifically about Netflix original movies. Since that's what we do on this channel, we review Netflix things. Now, today is the best, tomorrow is the worst. But Netflix this year had some incredible outings, one of the best years they've ever had. I have a feeling they will be dominating awards season in terms of nominations, and I need you in the comments down below. How did you feel about Netflix this year? What are your best and worst? Did you watch some films that I wasn't able to see? I saw over 70 Netflix original movies, but I certainly did not see all of them. If you guys enjoy these lists, be sure to drop a thumbs up. And I do always want to state these are original films from Netflix, so there are plenty of movies that were trending this year that weren't technically Netflix originals, so I can't include those. And there is one movie specifically that I have seen thanks to a film festival. It does technically release in 2020, but it releases on Netflix in January of next year. That is Pieces of a Woman. I would have included it on this list. It would have been extremely high, but we have to go by the Netflix release date, and that's January, so expect it on next year's list. But first, we have honorable mentions. The first is a beautiful film called Tiger Tail that I was sure would end up in my top 10 Netflix movies. It has to be one of the best looking movies on Netflix all year, and the story is wonderful. Then we have The Social Dilemma, the documentary that made us all sit back and go, okay, maybe we're on our phones too much. Maybe I'm on my phone too much. That one freaked me out. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then a very unexpected and surprising coming-of-age story called The Half of It that shocked me in terms of this genre on Netflix. Great acting, thoroughly entertaining, and it almost cracked this top 10, but it didn't quite get there. At number 10 is the 40-year-old version, not the one with Steve Carell. This stars and is actually directed by Radha Blank, and remember that name, because she absolutely blew me away. This is a very personal story. It feels like a lot of applications from real life here, from her life, but it's shot in black and white. And it's all about a playwright who has always tried to make it in that industry, but suddenly she kind of reinvents herself as a rapper. So she's going between two very different worlds, the world of hip-hop and then the world of writing, producing a play. And it's an interesting balance. It's one that I didn't know if I would enjoy or not. I'm like, this movie doesn't sound, but you watch it and you see her performance and you see the direction, one of the most crisp-looking movies of the year. I loved the choice to do it in black and white. The cinematography is excellent. It really captures the city, and it captures this struggle. And it's one that I can't necessarily relate to yet, but I have a feeling once I get that age, I will enjoy this movie much more so than I already do. It is the 10th best Netflix movie of the year for me, and it's one that I believe more people need to watch. At number 9 has to be one of the most shocking and interesting and thoroughly entertaining movies I've seen all year on a streaming platform, and that is the recent film The Call, where we have a 28-year-old main character who gets a call from a woman by the name of Young Suk asking for her friend. Later on, they both realize that they are separated by not distance, but the span of 20 years, and both individuals are living in the same house. Now, this sounds like a familiar premise. We have seen movies like this before, but it's all about the twists and turns here. It's all about thinking one thing about a character and then later on realizing, well, maybe we're making the wrong decision, or maybe we are believing too much in a specific thing. And The Call was just interesting, and it mixed in all these different genres, right? You watch a movie to be entertained, and this film has a bit of horror, a bit of sci-fi. When you think about it, it is very much a thriller, and it's a drama at times. The Call kept me on edge, and it kept me waiting for the next big event to happen, and the finale is crazy. Don't know if everyone's going to love it, but it ended up in my top 10. Here's a movie that just blew me away at the beginning of the year, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. This is The Platform, and it's one that, I think everyone is going to fall on a different side of the fence on. My dad watched it. He was like, What was that? And I understand I got that sentiment from a lot of people, but I really enjoyed the platform because it was different. It was claustrophobic. It was freaky. It's all about this mysterious place, this prison that has a bunch of different levels. And on every level, there are 2 inmates. And then you have this platform of food that descends to each level. But as you can expect, the lower it gets, the less food there is, so it ends up being a fight for survival. You don't want to be on the lowest floor, but it's also a random, seemingly sequence of who ends up on what floor every, I believe, like 30 days or something like that. So many days to stay on that specific floor. My goodness, this movie, and it's one I need to watch again because I watched it, freaked me out, very dark, very visceral, but it was very, very entertaining and different. I have never seen a movie like this. You can make comparisons. We've had plenty of films dealing with different themes, and this may be too on the nose, but for me, a movie like The Platform, and this is why I watch movies, to get something, even if I'm not sure on every decision that they made, that just feels unlike any other movie I've seen. And that's what The Platform felt like for me. Let's throw in a good documentary. We have to have a good documentary in the top 10. This, for me, is one of, if not my favorite documentaries of the year. Dick Johnson is Dead. This movie was beautiful. It was a little freaky at first. We have director Kirsten Johnson, who finds a way to keep her 86-year-old father alive forever by creating this documentary that, speaks upon Dick Johnson and talks about how incredible of a person he is. But it's also a very dark sense of humor because she's kind of staging fantasies of his death multiple times throughout this movie. And it deals a lot with the great beyond, and it's this father-daughter relationship, and he essentially doesn't have long at the beginning of the film to live, so he finally gets to be this movie star where his daughter is able to kind of give one last thing to us as an audience and to him as a beautiful soul. Man, this guy is just the best. This is why you watch movies, to smile, to get emotional, to see a heartfelt documentary with genuinely cool filmmaking techniques. I do think 1 or 2 of the deaths was a little bit, too much for me because like this, come on. And he did get a bit overwhelmed by it at times, but that is really the only criticism I have for a documentary that is genuinely one of the better ones you're going to see this year. I think this movie could deserve to win Best Documentary at the Oscars. I feel that strongly about it. I love Dick Johnson is Dead. Next up, Spike Lee. The man is bringing us yet another fascinating tale, one that's made so interestingly. And I will admit, the first hour of this movie, maybe 45 minutes, I was thinking, okay, it's a bit slower pace than I expected it to be, and we're trying to build up these 4 characters, well, really these 5 to 6 characters, and understand where they're coming from and why they need to go back to this place and what it means to them. But then they go, something happens, and oh my goodness, the tension, the intensity, it all amps and ramps up to an 11, and I was completely on board from then on out. So what they're searching for is they're searching for the remains of their fallen squad leader and the promise of a buried treasure. And these heroes, they're battling humanity and forces of nature. And it's an unexpected film in many ways, mentally and for these characters physically. And Spike Lee adds that flair, that style that you want him to add. It is so well made. First off, Delroy Lindo, who I believe gives one of the best performances of the year, as well as Chadwick Boseman, who gives a great supporting performance. Wasn't in the movie as much as I expected, but Spike Lee, great job on this film. Thus, we have the return of David Fincher in Mank, and this is a film that we were all very excited about, one of my more anticipated movies of the year, genuinely. Now, I think Mank ended up being a bit less accessible to a broad audience than I expected. It's one of those movies that I think you're going to appreciate so much more if you've seen Citizen Kane, and so much more if you've seen Citizen Kane recently. I thoroughly enjoy this movie on a technical level. I think it is one of the best technical movies of the year in terms of cinematography and direction and the look. I wasn't all there on the story. I didn't gravitate to it on the level that I wanted to think. It's another David Fincher masterpiece, but I still really enjoyed it. Oldman's performance, Seyfried's performance, I think the entire cast is outstanding. And it's interesting, and it transports you back to a time that has a fascinating look and feel to it, and I think Fincher captured that magically. So lower than a lot of people anticipated, but still Mank. It's David Fincher. What are you going to do? And in a movie that I just moved above Mank, I gave them both the exact same score, and I was debating it in my head. Which one do I feel more strongly about, right? I do believe Mank is better on a technical level, but in terms of story, I think Ma Rainey's Black Bottom may have resonated with me just a bit more, and that's why I have to give it the slight edge. Both films, again, the same score. Spectacular. Chadwick Boseman, Viola freaking Davis. Oh my goodness, two of the best performances of the year, and that's what the movie rides on, right? It's a small story, one location, tensions are rising when Mother of the Blues, Ma Rainey, and her band gather at a recording studio in 1927, and it's all about this day in the life of these individuals and how it continues to escalate over time. Boseman's character in Levy, he's very sure of himself and confident that he can make it in this world, but the forces around him are not allowing him to do it to the level that he wants. And then you have Ma Rainey, who walks in a room and just takes all of the attention away from anything or anyone else, and she is a force to be reckoned with. Trust me. But Viola Davis does a great job of making you believe that, and Chadwick Boseman gives a performance that I think could win him the Oscar for Best Actor this year. We'll just have to see. But this movie's great. Here's the shock of the century for me. So I actually had The Devil All the Time a bit lower on this list, and then something in me made me want to go rewatch it. I was thinking, this is the only movie that I feel not as confident about. I rewatched it. I actually upped my score just a little bit, still around an 8 out of 10. But this movie stuck with me in so many ways. The only issue I have is maybe it's a bit convoluted. Maybe there are too many storylines going on. But watching it for a second time, I actually came to appreciate one or two of the storylines that I didn't love the first time around, and it felt more cohesive. Right? And you're going to feel that way rewatching any movie. You're going to feel more strongly about it because you notice things that you didn't notice the first time. But I noticed things that made me enjoy the movie more. And Antonio Campos, I just don't think he's getting the recognition that he deserves for this film. I think this movie's a bit underrated. I do. Pattinson's performance, yes, a little over the top, but I knew people like that within that space, right? Tom Holland gives one of his best career performances. He's spectacular. And the entire cast, every story, this movie's dark, right? And not everyone's going to be on board with the darkness, and that's okay. But it's just my kind of film. It's dealing with an area that I'm familiar with. It's dealing with characters that each have a dark side to them. It's gruesome at times, but it's almost kind of my cup of tea. So I had to move it up my lists. All of my lists, and I think I love this film. Speaking of divisive films, this is the one that you're going to see, and you may be like, yeah, I agree, Austin, or you may be like, this dude is out of his mind right now. You know what? That's fine. That's what movies are all about, man. I'm thinking of ending things. I did not research this movie for 2 days just to put it low on my list. It stuck with me in a way that said, Austin, you've got to figure this thing out, right? And sometimes that's not good, right? Sometimes you watch a movie, you just want to understand it entirely. That's not what Charlie Kaufman was doing here. He gave us a film that you had to think about, you had to look for context clues when you went back to it, and I didn't rewatch this movie fully, but I did make somewhat of an ending video that took me 3 hours to make because I went through the movie and looked at all of these different things, and when I started to put the pieces together and figure out what this film was all about, I sat back and said, oh my God, this movie's actually kind of brilliant, right? Takes you a while. I will link the video so you guys can watch my thoughts on it and how I feel about the plot and what it all means. And even while you're watching the movie, I was watching it thinking, what does this mean? What's this all about? Each of us will have our own interpretation, but what I believe the film is one that kind of put me in awe, and I sat back and said, this is so creative and unlike anything I've seen all year. And that's kind of what movies are all about. Again, there will be many on the other side of the fence. I expect that. But Charlie Kaufman is one of the best writers in Hollywood. And he gave us a film that is interesting. That's why it's number 2 on my list. That's pretty high. Does this get any Oscar nominations, by the way? Maybe for writing, but other people may not agree. Y'all know the whole world is watching the trial of the Chicago 7. This film, man, I just had a great time. It was an absolute blast. Now, the only thing that got me was kind of that, overly cheerful standing ovation style ending, and I won't spoil exactly what happened. But other than that, we get a true story here that is powerful, it is impactful, it comes from Sorkin, a man who just knows how to kind of go down the middle and tell the true story, not lean one way, lean the other, tell something that is kind of everything we want as movie fans. We get great characters, we get interesting moments, very slick editing techniques. They explore some backstory to some of the characters and the way that they weave that in and out. I just think the movie is kind of perfectly pieced together, and while every storyline didn't overly resonate with me, and again, we got kind of that crowd-pleasing ending that didn't fully mesh with the rest of the movie, but the journey was just mesmerizing, spectacular. Sacha Baron Cohen, Eddie Redmayne, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, Jeremy Strong, Mark Rylance, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, John Carroll Lynch, a couple of cameos from some huge actors in there. The cast is stacked. I mean, this is one of the most stacked movies of the year, some of the best writing I've seen all year. The Trial of the Chicago 7 is not only a story that I'm glad I watched, it's one that is so well made, and I have a feeling, in terms of nominations at least, it's going to be a very heavy presence at the Oscars this year. So there's my list. It's very different from previous years because most of these years I'm having to find these random little Netflix movies that not a lot of people have seen, but this year, we have a lot of Oscar contenders, we have a lot of films that made a big splash, and we have some movies that I think will resonate with people for a long time. So again, Netflix, I just believe they crushed it this year. I do. Now, of course, we're going to talk about the bad movies. There were some bad Netflix films, absolutely. But as a studio as a whole, their original content is crushing, and we can't forget what they're doing with their series. That list, I'm ripping my hair out right now trying to figure that out. So if you guys enjoyed this list and you want to drop it a thumbs up button, that would be awesome. But I need your thoughts down below. What is your favorite and least favorite Netflix original movie of the year so far? And did I leave some movies off my list? Maybe I didn't see it. I tried to see as many as I could. It's been a long year. All right, guys, I appreciate it big time. Stay tuned. Tomorrow, more to come. And this evening, my review for The Midnight Sky, the brand new George Clooney movie. I'll see you soon.